because we must. Because we have to give our bodies breaks. We have to give our nervous system a break. We have to recharge. We have to refuel. We have to, in the midst of everything that feels so hard and overwhelming and like too much, we have to find reasons to continue to love our lives because nobody can do that for us. I cannot love your life for you. You cannot love my life for me. It is up to me.
Hey friends, and welcome back to the Show Up season of the Mary Marantz Show, a season all about how we never asked you to be perfect. We just asked you to show up. And today I am so excited to get to sit down with an author I have been admiring from afar for years. I feel like we should be friends already. We share an editor. As the two of us get to sit down, roll up our sleeves, and really talk about showing up in the both and of life, holding on to both the beauty and the horrors all around us with both hands, as we really sit down and dig into talking about Shannan's brand new books, Counterweights, an essential practice for holding hope in a heavy world. Shannan, welcome to the Mary Marantz Show.
I am so happy to be here. This feels long overdue. So
I
thanks for
know.
having me on.
I know. Kelsey has said amazing things about you from the beginning. I felt from watching you just online that I was going to fall in love with your words, and I can safely report today. We can just put it on the record for everybody that I absolutely 100% have. I was telling you before we hit record that I really pride myself on reading an entire book before an episode because I find it's helpful.
Sure.
Who knew? But with yours, I only got through 30 pages before I had what I know equates to a full hour of questions. And in my opinion, that is a hallmark of a truly gifted writer when there's just so much to unpack on every page. We're going to talk about that a bunch. You'll see all the places where I just want to pause and appreciate the gift of those words. But yeah, I mean, I've been looking forward to this so much ever since we got it on the calendar. And, I think a really good sort of jumping off place for us is this quote right here that you share from a poet that kicks off the very first page, Rilke, that is, "Life is very singularly made to surprise us, where it does not utterly appall us."
Isn't
And I feel like
that
we could just
accurate?
camp on that sentence for an hour right here.
Yep.
So using that as a springboard, just sort of tell us why the surprise and the appall led you to write this book.
That's the whole thing. I found myself at the time that I started writing this, but even for years back, increasingly feeling myself caught in the tension that life feels so difficult and challenging and increasingly almost kind of scary. I'm not like a real fearful person, but I was like, this feels kind of scary. The conflict, the division, this sort of bodily sense that things are falling apart. And at the very same time, I love my life. And so, this tension of like, what does it look like to be really honest about the state of things, right? The world, this time, whatever. What does it look like to be really honest about that, but also to not feel guilty when we still just really love it. We still really love it here. We love this life. We love this gift that we've been given. And so to carry that tension was challenging for me. I would find myself kind of flipping between these two binary options. Everything is terrible or everything is great. I'm having an awful day. I'm having a really great day. The reality is most days for me, and I think for most of us, are a tangled knot of both. And so I just set out to really, I'd been kind of stewing on this concept of counterweights. And then, I found the word that really fit, to name it counterweights really worked. And so this was years in the works. And so by the time I sat down to really write the book, it's because I found that the practice of counterweights in my daily, ordinary life, I mean, it's a part of my life now, and it has been for a while. It's just something I reach for, something I lean on. And it helped me. It helped make my life better. It's very simple. And so it's something that I knew as I was hearing from readers and people on the internet and people in my regular life, how do we manage this? How do we carry this all? It feels like it's too much. I feel like I'm drowning. These are the things I was saying and hearing from a lot of people. And so I just had a strong feeling that this practice was going to be helpful for people. And so I sat down and started writing it.
Mhm. Yeah, you know what I love? We're gonna get into some of the heavy stuff and everything. We don't You don't know this about me, but I'm an Enneagram 4, so we like to live in the deep
Oh,
and
I
the
love a
hard.
four.
But one of the things that I also this is also true of Enneagram 4s people don't usually get about us is we love the delights as well. We love
Hmm.
not silver linings, we're gonna talk about that,
Yeah.
but we like those things that help us balance, the hard. And so I love that every essay throughout the book, you say, ends with kinda like these little delights to sort of balance. I just wanted to read through the first list, iconic combinations, 'cause wow, did you nail this. You say chips and salsa, carnation pink and cherry red, which happen to be my brand colors, so I
Ooh.
super agree. Rainstorms and naps, button downs and baseball hats, amen. Campfire smoke and flannels, stripes and florals, hammock and a book, peanut butter and homemade strawberry jam. I don't know this one. What is monstera and an east window?
It's a
What is that?
plant. So
Oh, that's
it's
why I
like
don't
this.
know it.
It's this big plant
That's
right
why I
here.
don't know it.
This big
We're
sort
gonna
of
talk
like
about this.
jungly, exotic looking plant. They like their sunlight and they can grow pretty big.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. We're gonna talk about how I have a death thumb, not a green thumb later on. And Moira and Johnny Rose. I
Mm,
love that. I feel like that's just like some fun little warm-ups to you're just gonna fall in love with Shannon. Just
mm.
get ready, because if you connect with that list, you're just gonna love her. Okay, so let's just talk about this. I fell in love with your dad from the very first page. And I really resonated with how you talked about him because I read about my dad in Dirt, and that, they seem like they're kind of cut from a similar cloth. And so I'm going to read the first page. I did not bring my glasses up, so hopefully this will
Uh-oh.
work. There's a lot of words here we're going to hopefully say right.
Yeah, just give it your best.
Rainer
I
Maria
think
Rilke.
so. I think so. That's my best guess too.
Cool. Rainer Maria Rilke was a poet. My dad, Dwight Garber, is not. Rilke, born in 19th century Germany, was known for his mastery of language and his precision with a poet's tools. My dad, born in 1951 to German Baptist parents and raised on the edge of a river in rural Ohio, has never known a stranger and is a master of everything I've ever watched him do. A lifelong laborer with a leathery neck to prove it, my dad can't locate a Rilkean meter if his life depended on it, but he can do trigonometry in his head. Across his lifetime, he has built everything from ranch-style homes to four-lane bridges to an ornate waterbed that made him a small town made him small town famous in the late 1980s. But before all of that, at the age of 19, he fell in love with a Catholic girl, and together they built a third way across religious expectations and cultural norms. I don't know exactly what dad thinks about beauty, but he grows the prettiest garden in Miami County and mows his 2 acres on the bias, taking care along the row of flowering pear trees like a good dad does. When I called him on his most recent birthday, well past sunset in November, we chatted for a few minutes before he drew out his customary, well, and said he'd better get back to his moonlight mowing sesh. I want to hang out with your dad. Like
He's
we
a
just need to
riot.
can we just call in Dwight on the
I
episode?
love that.
I
Be
feel
careful
like
what
that
you
needs
wish
to
for.
happen. Right, right. I get that as well. So we do this thing on the show that I have lovingly come to call the Zach Morris TV timeout meta moment. If you remember Saved by the Bell, he would often
Oh yeah.
break the fourth wall and talk right to the audience. There are a lot of people who listen to the show who are aspiring authors, they're writers, they
Mhm.
have a love for the craft of writing. And so when we come across really beautiful writing, we just pause to really celebrate that. And I wanted to take this moment for that entire page, really, but also especially for the first line. Rainer Maria Rilke was a poet. My dad, Dwight Garber, is not. Will you just riff for a little bit about using that kind of contrast and just sort of like the punchy simplicity of those two sentences to set up your dad as a simple guy, but then weave in how it also prepares us as the reader to be surprised by something like trigonometry in his head.
Right. I appreciate this question more than you can know. The work of a writer is so weird, for lack of a better word. It's so singular. It's so, we're getting started for me is always so hard, particularly, starting the book. And I know some authors write out of order. I mean, I did a lot of shuffling around. Kelsey helped me do a lot of shuffling around of, which chapter is going to fall where. But I knew that this was going to be the start of the book, and I wrote it first. Um, and so it's one of those things that I knew I came to know. I spent a lot of time just thinking on and stewing on this book and what it would look like, and where to begin, and all these questions that we have to really sit with, and questions that take time. But I knew, and I go into, and we might talk about this, I don't know, but I go into the reality that in many ways my dad gave me this framework of counterweights through his own kind of blue collar worker guy, as my kids used to say, way. And when I discovered the Rilke poetry, and specifically the idea of, this collision of beauty and terror, that's what life is. It's a collision of beauty and terror. I started to see the through line between my dad's philosophy of carrying heavy things in two buckets and Rilke's poetic way of describing life as, beauty and terror together. I knew that this book, I mean, maybe the only thing I knew at the outset of writing this book was that there was going to be a lot of this contrast. It was going to be a both and book where we're really digging into the complexities and the nuances of life as this, and it's also this. It's this really wonderful thing, and it's this really terrible thing. It's this miracle, and it's this madness. Like, and so this idea of kind of these dueling perspectives, they worked in my brain, and I can tell you, for my writing process, I often joke around to my husband or to my really close friends. It feels like my writing process is I write everything twice. I mean, when I'm
Yeah.
book writing, it feels even before I'm turning in the manuscript, doing edits, like on my own, I'm writing something and I'm scrapping it and I'm starting over so much. But that particular opener, I remember where I was when I wrote it. I think I was weirdly in, I was somewhere on a trip to the Pacific Northwest. I think I was in an airport waiting, and suddenly, these two men from different times doing different kinds of work sort of converged in my mind as that initial contrast to kind of unfurl the book from there. And there are little similarities. My dad grew up in a German Baptist family, so that's like a very conservative religious sect. I don't know if that's the right word, but very conservative, kind of almost Amish, but they have that
Mhm.
German connection, and yet they're very different people. And from there, the framework locked in. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was almost like a stroke of luck. I mean, sometimes we have that in our writing, and when I wrote that first sentence, I knew that that's where I was going to start. I knew that was going to stay put. And so, Mary, thank you for noticing.
Yes.
Thank you for liking it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Ooh, ooh, yes. Game. I love it. Okay, so what I think is kinda cool about that too is that those 2 characters, like you talk about, there's this crossover, but it also sets up a juxtaposition. I remember
Yeah,
you saying, here's this, like, lyrical Rilke who is much more metaphysical, which I
right.
my ears super perked my eyes, I guess, super perked up because metaphysics was my favorite philosophy class I've ever taken, meets your dad who has all the practicality of a Midwestern storm shelter, you said, or something like that, which made me laugh. And I just love that there's this, like, from the very first sentence, you're setting up the reader to understand that there can be juxtaposition, and
Yeah.
these 2 people couldn't seem more different, and yet there's common ground there, and there's something to be learned from both of them. You go on to say, we're talking about your dad. "It's no surprise the faith tradition that raised and sustained him has left him with indelible marks. Rilke and Dad, these men from different eras and clashing timelines, unknowable in unique ways, have somehow conspired to teach me that the human task of remaining upright in a dizzying world can be distilled into a single line of instruction. We must learn to carry the cosmos." Woo, that's good. What does carry the cosmos mean to you?
To me, I will say I fiddled around early on with wanting that to be a title, or something somewhere. I was really drawn to that phrase, "carry the cosmos." For me, it means these are the lives we've been given, And we are handed things that feel impossible to carry. We are handed things that we would never have asked for, things that we cannot put down because they are outside of our control, things that are difficult. And we are handed so much beauty and so much joy and so much connection and so much opportunity. And our job as a person is to figure out how to carry it all. And so for me, the cosmos is just, a little poetic maybe. It's just my way of saying we have to figure out how to do this. We have to figure out how to carry everything that we have been handed, and to really to find a way that feels sustainable so that we can just keep doing that as our lives continue to unfold, and things change and things get better and then they get worse and then they do it all over again. That's the atmosphere that we've been given, and so we have to figure out how to do it. And that's really the question that the book is helping to answer. How do we carry everything we've been given?
Yeah, I love that this especially that phrase like we've been given like that which is ours to hold. You talk about true abundance is not just the good stuff, we get it all, every drop, every dreg, the good, the terrible, the who even knows. That's the deal. Like that's what
Mhm.
we sign up for. That's the
Yeah.
price of admission to be human. And I just really love that so much because I'm gonna be honest, Shannon, when I was younger, like 15, so grew up in a trailer in West Virginia, went to Sunday school with my grandma Goldie to Methodist church, then didn't go to church for a long time, then started going to a Baptist church with my best friend on the cheerleading squad. And like her family was like the polar opposite of mine in terms of
Mhm.
they had a really nice house. She got a car when she turned 16. And so when I talk in dirt about how when I got baptized, there was this very big part of me that hoped I would come out of that water less Bess or, more Baptist than Bess. Bess was my maiden name. And that, that I had I went from this God that I felt like drew close to the window when I was 4 and close enough to leave fog marks on the glass to being a God who clearly had favorites and we weren't
Yeah.
it. And so I thought if I could come out of that water, then I would feel more like the Baptist family than the Bess family. And I sort of also there's a huge part of me that thought I had fulfilled my quota of hard things by 18. It became incredibly shocking to me when around 34, 35, things got really hard again. What do you mean? I thought we've already, like, checked
Right.
this
I did
list.
this.
Yeah, we're in the happily ever after
Yeah.
part. I don't get it. And so I just really love that you are drawing our eyes to it, you're drawing our attention to it, you're letting us sit in it, that this part will never end while we're here, right? There will always be the hard, there will always be the beautiful, there will always be the horrible, there will always be the incredible. So I guess one of the questions that came up for me bouncing out of that is given that I'm very slowly learning to make peace with that, that I
Mhm.
didn't, dang it, knock it all off my to-do list by 18. How do we carry what we've been given to carry? How do we carry the cosmos without it, slipping into that very Appalachian, at least for me? I feel like with some Ohio roots,
Mhm.
you might have this as well of this like stiff upper lip, I'll do it myself. We don't ask for help from nobody,
Oh, yeah.
kind of feeling. How do we not fall into carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders, both from like not letting other people in to help and then also trying to be God over the circumstance, I guess,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, yes, that echoes a lot of my upbringing. We probably have more in common than we even knew. We're gonna
Yeah.
have to keep talking.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, those kind of that bootstraps, pull yourself up by your bootstraps way of living was just I was immersed in it. That was the agreed upon method. And I certainly saw, I mean, I had the wealth of opportunity to see my parents. We received help from other people. We did. And I saw my parents be very, very generous in weird and unconventional ways to other people. I mean, that was woven into the fabric of my childhood and my life. We had many people, live with us in our very humble home at various
Hmm.
points of time because they needed a place to be. They were running from abuse. I mean, all different kinds of
Wow.
things. One woman was dying and had nowhere to be. And so the next thing we knew as young kids, we had a hospital bed in our living room. And this woman we didn't really know, this very old woman who was dying. And then she didn't die. She like bounced back, and then it was a whole new situation of like, oh, now what? So we have these stories kind of running through. I would say for me, coming out of that sort of upbringing where I was on, in some ways, on both sides of that equation, while also, having this worldview of like, you get it if you deserve it, and you earn
Mhm.
everything you have, and all this kind of bootstraps theology, worldview, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
I believe to my core that community is how we carry the cosmos. We
Mm.
cannot carry it on our own. And so
Yeah.
that's a theme that runs wild through every book I've ever written. It's a lesson that I have had to learn in some ways the hard way, because I am very introverted. I'm very happy to be on my own. I probably have some pride issues of my own too, of not wanting to ask for help. I've had to learn by experience that if we're going to do this, if we're going to survive, it is going to be in connection with each other. And so that's just something that, throughout this book, even it's just going to keep coming up. You're going to continue to get peeks into the communities that help carry me, and the communities that I help to carry as well. I mean, it's an interdependence. I think that is the only way.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, so let's take it the next step. We've introduced your dad. You say, "I don't know about you, but I could use some no-nonsense dad advice these days. As time feels like a skipping record, logic is inverted, and history keeps doubling back on itself. When will the madness stop? How can we possibly endure the endless burn of bad news and hold the hefty human weight of everyday goodness?" And I feel like even before we start to excavate layers down deep into this conversation, that's probably a question that people have on their minds right now is
Hmm.
how are we supposed to even think about the beautiful when things feel so hard? And I have
Yeah.
moments of like, here I am buying pink flowers for my kitchen island and the
Right.
world is on fire, and it
Right.
just feels like the cognitive dissonance is piercing. So, I guess just from your own experience, given that you've written an entire guidebook for us to find little delights, to find little beautiful things to hold on to, what do you tell yourself when that one logical part of your brain goes, "What are we doing right now? How are we sipping
Yeah.
tea
Yeah.
when, whatever?" So
It's
just talk about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. Cognitive dissonance is the perfect way to describe it. And for me, it's like it can be a feeling that almost seems surreal. It can kind of pull me out of my body. That's something I've talked to my therapist that I used to see about a lot, was this feeling that I would have where I was almost floating outside of myself and observing my life. It's one of those things that I was like, I does this make me sound crazy? Does this make any sense? And basically, what a good therapist would do is to say a lot of people feel that way. They might describe it in different ways. I often found myself with this sense of I'm just getting through this moment that I'm in, and my life is somewhere up ahead. My
Yes.
life is somewhere just out of reach. And that never meant, you know, anything separate from my husband, my kids, this home, this community. But it was this weird detached, like, I'm just getting through this so I can get to that. What is that? I don't really know. And as I've talked about that here and there, it resonates with people. And so the good news is I'm not alone, because it really felt confusing to me and hard to explain. I just think we are overloaded. We
Mhm.
are overloaded, and it's very easy to almost sort of disassociate. It's easy to, come outside of our bodies a little bit and judge ourselves for buying the pink flowers for the island. And by the way, if we don't judge ourselves, there are a lot of other people who are happy to do that for us. A really good friend of mine recently talked about her favorite book. I mean, she's like keyed in to the world and what's going on. She talked about a favorite book that she read recently, and somebody on the internet said, "That's great, but you must not be aware that the world is on fire." And so there's this impulse. And even the person who said that to her, I give them the benefit of the doubt. I think that person is probably feeling something so heavily, that there
Yeah.
can be that sense of like, how's anybody focusing on anything else in the world? My answer to that is because we must. because we have to give our bodies breaks. We have to give our nervous system a break. We have to recharge. We have to refuel. We have to, in the midst of everything that feels so hard and overwhelming and like too much, we have to find reasons to continue to love our lives, because nobody can do that for us. I cannot love your life for you. You cannot love my life for me. It is up to me. And if we want to do that long-term work of moving towards justice, of moving toward, what God's love can look like in a really practical way, we have to stay whole. We have to stay healthy to the best of our ability. And so that requires us to go looking for those counterweights, which for you were the pink flowers on the island. I mean, that speaks to my heart. I love flowers.
Mhm.
I find them wherever possible. I buy them and put them in places around my home, because in the midst of a really hard day, it's silly how much that can help, honestly.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so we've referenced this a few times. We're going to layer deeper now. We're going to start to get some working definitions on counterweights and things like
Okay.
that. You say Dwight Garber from Pleasant Hill, Ohio, with his diesel truck and leather tool belt, shiny with use. Oh, the detail. I love that. Has the answer. From the time my siblings and I were small, he taught us that carrying something heavy becomes more efficient, more doable if we carry something equally heavy in the other hand. You go on to say, applied to most life situations, this theory of balance doesn't always stand up to scrutiny. Few things are ever truly equally balanced, but it's hard to argue with the laws of physics. Distributing the load as evenly as possible keeps us moving forward rather than lurching to one side and potentially tipping over. And I just wrote in my notes, this is such an interesting, imagery, such an interesting point that
Mhm.
I want to camp here for a while because to your point of feeling like we're out of our bodies, hovering above, looking
Mhm.
down, we got to get through this just to get back to our real life, wherever that is, catch up to the timeline or whatever. I feel like most of the world, I'm seeing this in all of my people. I'm seeing this in my close people, and I'm seeing it in my people I interact with on the internet. I feel like we are in a collective functional freeze right now. And the instinct that I'm seeing is, oh, I can't add anything more to the plate. I can't
Yeah.
even think about doing anything else. I need to lay stuff down. And here comes this theory that says, oh, actually, we have to pick more up. Big air quotes around more because I know you're going to flesh that out. And so, what do you say to people whose knee jerk reaction is, I can't carry any more, Shannon and Mary? I don't know what you
Right.
want from me.
Right.
Yeah. Like, what do you mean when you say have something equally heavy? I'd be interested in that word, like how you're thinking about heavy in the other hand.
I have a clear visceral bodily memory of my dad walking across the barnyard toward the barn with me. I don't remember if any of my siblings were there as well. And when he first sort of gave that lesson, and it's something that just kind of popped up here and there, he wasn't trying to give a lesson. He was just being a dad, trying to get stuff to the barn and trying to get help getting stuff to the barn. And I remember thinking, he's holding a bucket. I don't know what was in the bucket, but he's showing how when you hold another heavy bucket in the other hand, it actually helps. And as a
Mm,
young child, that felt impossible. It felt, counterintuitive, though I didn't have that word in my vocabulary at that time. It was just like, this doesn't make any sense. You're telling me to carry more at a time when I'm probably going to struggle with just the one bucket. The problem with that was he was right. It's like as soon as you grab something heavy in that other hand where we're lurching over, we're kind of pulled back to center. It kind of grounds us and levels out that load so that we can continue moving forward and so that we can create the momentum to keep moving forward. And so, I sat with that mental picture for my entire life, since then, and it would pop up now and then, this idea of where's the other bucket? What's the other bucket? I ended up landing on accidentally the word counterweights, because it's almost like, when you picture a dad with two buckets,
yeah,
it starts to look a little bit like a scale. And so I think
totally.
I think of our lives as kind of the scale. And so, we could talk about the buckets, we could talk about the scale, but on one side, you have this heavy stuff that is out of your control. You cannot put it down.
Mm,
Unfortunately, you don't have the option. And those heavy things are going to change. They're going to come and go. Some of them are universal and we have them in common. Some of them are very, very personal and unique. What I'm here to say is there's this other bucket, this other side of the scale that we do have a say over. We do have some control over that. And so, what would it look like to load that side of the scale with heavy goodness? With heavy beauty, with just adding weight bit by bit, putting the pink flowers on the island. We're going to add that to the other side, looking around us throughout our lives and just constantly being mindful of what is within my reach right now, what is accessible right now in this moment, or something that I can look forward to very, very soon, that can help me carry on, that can help me breathe through the chaos. Those are our counterweights. And I think a lot of us are doing this in a way already. We're trying to find ways to survive. Sometimes we're trying to find ways to numb ourselves or to disassociate a little bit. And
Yeah.
that's just our reality. When we give it the name counterweights, something really powerful happens because it is an active acknowledgement of the hard things we are carrying. So this
Mhm.
is different than counting our blessings or making a gratitude list. Those are not bad things, but they ignore this reality. That's just it's going to stay our reality. When we apply the word counterweights to these little pops of delight or joy or rest or whatever it is that we might be needing, and we imagine ourselves like, okay, this is within my reach and I'm going to take it and I'm going to put it in that other bucket. And this is my counterweight. It reminds us that we can only counter what we are first willing to weigh. And so,
Wow.
whether we're talking about that heavy, hard stuff or the heavy, good stuff, it's acknowledgement, it's honesty, it's naming the things that hurt and then naming the things that help and believing that they all deserve our sacred attention.
Gosh, that's good. When you were talking, the image there were a couple images that came to mind. One is that Justin and I live in our little 1880s fixer-upper by the sea, we call it. So the house is approaching 150 years old, and when we got it and it needed a lot of work, one of the things we did was replace the windows, and the windows, Shannon, actually had counterweights in them. It was a pulley
Oh, yeah,
system,
yeah,
and so,
yeah.
like, they were like these long, wrought iron, like, tube sort of things on rope, and
Mhm.
when the window would go up, the weight would go down, so it would keep it from, like, slamming up or slamming
Yep.
down, and I feel like there's a metaphor there, and man, I just can't quite grab it, but it's
No,
something
it's
about,
there.
like,
It's there.
we open a
I think
window
you're
by
on it.
carrying heavy things or something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and so that's the thing. It's not what those counterweights in those windows. I had those windows too in my childhood bedroom. We often they failed at some point, and we had to like stick a hammer in
Yeah.
the window jamb to keep that window up. The counterweights didn't work in that case over time. But what they didn't do was create some illusion of perfect, like everything is equal. They had a job to do. They weren't canceling out the weight. I guess that's a better way to say it. Those counterweights weren't causing the window to not exist or to it's this idea not of like the goal is not this, right? That these are our
Mhm.
lives, this is the scale, and this counterweights will bring us to here.
Right.
For me, what it means, and I know some people are listening to this and not seeing it, when we are tipped way over with our heavy terror, our heavy pain, we're lurching to one side. When we add good stuff to this other side of the scale, this other bucket, it just pulls us upright. It pulls us a little further off the ground. I don't think there is a bouquet of flowers big enough or pink enough to cancel out the heavy stuff you're carrying right now, Mary. It's just not possible. It doesn't work that way. But if it lifts you just a couple inches off the ground, that's a win. And if we can get into that rhythm of looking for these counterweights, and some of it is just, the power of naming it, like I mentioned, some of it is just creating delight where maybe we've gotten used to just going through the motions and, like I said, like looking ahead to our life and forgetting, oh, this is my actual life.
Yeah.
We're
Right.
recording this on a Wednesday. This is the only March 4th that I get. This is it. This is my day. And so when I wake up in the morning, and this is something I write about later in the book because it sounds maybe kind of silly and small. It's very, very meaningful for me. And it's an ongoing counterweight. I come out to my kitchen and I look at my mugs that are displayed on the wall, and with intention, I decide which mug I want to drink my tea from. And it takes a couple of seconds. And I don't know what causes me to choose one mug over another. I mean, sometimes I have my reasons, but I'm just letting my body have a say. I'm reminding myself that this is a tiny little moment where I have agency, where I get to choose something to start my day off with caffeine, with some warmth, with a moment to stop and pause. And so that's for me a counterweight. So
Mm.
sometimes it's just kind of reframing the things that we're already doing and creating a little bit of magic around that moment.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. Just to close the loop, I don't even really know again what if there's too much here for us. I'm sure that there is, just based on the example it is, but the other thing that came to mind besides my windows was
Yeah.
that image that I've heard people describe of when Jesus talks about the yoke, that it's actually
Mm,
all the weight is not meant to be on one side, that it's actually meant to be like spread out across, what those
right.
actual harnesses look like. Kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of the image you were talking about with your dad with the
Yeah.
buckets.
Somebody very, very recently, I can't remember who it even was, but they were talking about, we were talking about counterweights and the metaphor, the practice. And she said, well, it's just like what everybody always told us about our backpacks. When we would carry our backpack on one shoulder, like that's a bad idea.
Right.
Put it on both shoulders, and suddenly your body feels better and it's a little
Yeah.
easier to carry forward. I mean, so
I have
it
to
is
ask
that.
you,
Yeah.
have you seen the new remake of 21 Jump Street with Channing Tatum and,
No. Should
Jonah
I?
Hill? Yes. Yes. Um, so it starts off there, like, in the '90s, and Channing Tatum's, like, the cool guy, and Jonah Hill's, like, the nerd to get Channing picks on, and then they end up at the police academy together, and they become partners. That's the, like, synopsis up to
Okay.
this point. And they get the 21 Jump Street program from the '80s, like Johnny Depp, is they get sent to high school to pretend to be high school students
Okay.
as police officers. And so in their day, you one-strapped. You one-strapped, that was the cool
Oh,
thing to do.
yeah.
And by
That's what
the
I
time they
did.
go back, he's like, "Everybody's two-strapping. What's happening? It's two-strapping."
Right. I felt
So,
so nerdy when I finally made that switch, and I still my work bag, my computer bag is a backpack, and there I am going through the airport with both
yes,
straps on. It
that's
it
right.
helps. It
It
distributes
does.
that weight, and when we
Yeah.
can just redistribute a little bit of that weight, every little bit helps.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, so one of the things that you talk about is that you don't want anybody to mistake counterweights, and you referenced this already, but you don't want it to
Mhm.
be like the kind of like, oh, live a balanced life, perfect balance,
Yeah.
never drop any of the glass or plastic balls or whatever that sometimes like gurus will talk about. And you give this really, in my opinion, incredibly powerful example that really just made me think about it in a very different way. And this was
Mhm.
Chef David Chang's interplay of
Mm.
complex flavors. So will you just talk about that, like the rice and the chili sauce,
Yeah.
and how that represents the kind of balance, the kind of counterweight you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah. So, this is what happens when we're book writing or when we're spending a lot of time with any idea. Everything, like as I was writing, counterweights and like the language of counterweights was happening everywhere.
Yeah.
And I am a massive foodie. Are you?
Okay. Yes,
Okay.
and I feel like aspiring because I don't cook at all,
But you
but I
enjoy
love
food.
to
That's
eat
all
it.
I
Yes.
mean. That's
Okay.
all I mean.
Okay.
Like people who really care about food. I know Kelsey also is. So in this moment, I'm like,
Yes.
maybe the three of us have this in common too.
And
So
we're
I
gonna have
really,
dinner, more importantly, the 3 of us. I feel like that's the real
100%,
takeaway. Yeah.
100%. So yeah, I don't remember what I was watching with David Chang. He is a Korean American chef. We're big fans of his work around here. I have two Korean sons, and so it's just I like anything food related, honestly. But he talked about when in cooking, and I don't have the book in front of me. I don't remember exactly what the quote was, but he's talking about when we talk about balance in food, it doesn't mean an equal amount of salt, for example. This isn't quite how he said it, but I'm just going to riff here for a minute. Balance in food does not mean you want an equal amount of salt and an equal amount of, say, sugar, right? Like that would probably be terrible.
Yeah,
Balance
right.
means you're going to take something. The example I think he used was when you have a bowl of white rice, which
Yes.
is so foundational in Korean and Asian cuisine and in our home. You have this bowl of rice and it's delicious and comforting and it has things to offer, but it's kind of bland.
Yeah.
When you inject a little bit of chili oil to
Mm.
or soy sauce or gochujang or whatever it is, when you hit it with a punchy little kick of heat or salt or umami,
Mm,
the flavor is suddenly brought into balance. So it's not this idea of equal portions. You wouldn't want a bowl of rice with an equal amount of soy sauce. That would
right.
be terrible.
Right.
And so it's about achieving this balance is not about equal proportion. It's about being proportional, like finding the little bit that you need to offset what the other thing offers. Did I do that justice?
So good. So
Okay.
good. Yeah, absolutely.
I thought it was magnificent. I mean, that metaphor just works. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. Just like slow clap moment for the metaphor. It really does. Because I think we tend to want to do that, right? We want to like control things and, gold star and A plus and color
Mhm.
coded binding in it. So it means, or binder it, it means it must be equal, portions. Everything must be labeled. Everything must be neat and tidy. And it's like, no, it's actually just this magic that happens when unexpected things combine and they bring out the best in one another. They make you, appreciate each other more. Yeah.
And these sort of kind of opposing forces, sometimes these opposites, this juxtaposition, which we talked about earlier, that's what is often the thing that kind of brings us into not even balance, but like equilibrium, right?
Yeah.
So there's real alchemy to the fact that sorrow and joy coexist together. I mean, if we can find a way to accept that and to allow that into our experience in life, I think there's something really special about just doing the work of accepting this is the deal. This is the deal. I remember very clearly when I was in young adulthood. I got married pretty young, so I was, early married, and I'm calling my mom over the landline, back in the day, and I think we had a car repair that was, like, super expensive, and we had almost no money, and I just felt overwhelmed with, like, I just didn't know what to do. There was a part of me that just wished my parents could just pay for it for me. They couldn't, by the way, and I knew that,
Yeah.
but I just wanted somebody to make it go away. I wanted to
Yeah.
put that weight down, and I remember my mom saying in her very practical way, this is just going to be how the rest of your life is, Shannon.
Yeah.
Like, and it is. And now, my kids are hitting early adulthood, and I'm saying that to them too because it's kind of shocking.
Yeah.
It's kind of a shock to a young person growing into adulthood to realize, like, oh, adulthood is not as great and rosy as I thought it would be. It is great, and it's also just kind of hard. And so
Yeah.
we have to do some of that work around acceptance, which for me meant pulling out of me some of the toxic positivity that I had absorbed throughout my life, especially from my faith spaces, church spaces, and reorient myself towards a little more of that radical honesty. That me talking about how hard things are, me talking about this painful thing, me talking about this injustice does not itself cause the harm. I'm just being honest about it and I'm naming it and I'm trying to find some acceptance so that I can do my part, right? And there can be resistance to that. And so again, I'm just here for all of us to get a little more intentional and a little more honest.
Coming right off of that of just, naming things and opening our eyes and paying attention to the, injustices. You talk about a moment when you're writing and you hear sirens outside your window. And as you're writing, you say, I'm not sure where they're headed, but their refrain is fitting for a reality that teeters on the edge of crisis. And man,
Hmm.
I just felt that so viscerally. Like I felt like I was in the room with you. I have this guide I just released called the writing prompts. One of the things we talk about is dropping the reader right into the scene with you. And like I could hear the sirens and I could feel that I feel like I'm living in a dystopian movie in real time,
Yeah.
kind of, we're huge dystopian movie fans here in this household. Justin and I have
Right.
seen basically every 90s, is it an asteroid? Is it a dinosaur?
Right.
Aliens? And I
Right.
didn't expect they were all going to happen simultaneously,
Yeah.
in the year of our Lord 2025, 2026, whatever.
Hmm.
I literally looked at Justin yesterday and I said, "When do you think the dinosaurs are coming back?" Because I
That's a
feel like
very
that's
good
the last
question.
one. You
Right.
know somebody's gonna try that. So there we go. I think they're already doing it with like some sort of extinct wolf. So we're not far. We're
Oh
not far.
dear.
Okay, so you talk about building off of that, the sirens and everything. You talk about at a moment in history that often feels uncertain and unsafe, There is a call to emotional resilience that is urgent. And you go on to say, and I wrote it in all caps and red in my notes, we have a mandate to joy, not just for
Mhm.
our own well being, but so that we are able to engage in the cause of humanity. All caps, I wrote cause of
Mhm.
humanity. And speaking of 90s dystopian disaster movies, this kind of reminds me there's a scene in the movie Armageddon. The asteroid is about to crash into
Mhm.
Earth. Bruce Willis,
Oh,
apparently the
yeah.
driller, is the one who's going to save us, and his team of oil, deep sea oil rig drillers. And he argues with NASA. He says, I want them to have the night off before they're going to go up. And they're like, that's such a
Mm.
security breach. What if they tell somebody? Like, absolutely, we're not letting them off base. And he said, I need them to remember what they're fighting for.
Yes.
And that's what this kinda reminds me of, right? Like,
That's
we
exactly it.
have to have the good or we forget what we're fighting for. So,
Yeah.
just riff on this joy
Yeah.
mandate you are assigning us.
We have to we have to be able to get ourselves out of bed, number 1. We have to remember what we love about this life. And when I say this life, I'm saying, like, each of us are unique, particular, quirky, boring, complicated lives. If we can't hold on to what we love, why would we believe in the hope of repair? Why
Yeah.
would we give ourselves over to the cause of renewal and redemption? That I think, as a person of faith, I think that's part of my task here, right? We have to hold on to that hope in a way that's not hokey or, delusional. I've become a fan, not a fan, that's not quite the word I wanna use. I have taken up the habit of when people see me out in the world, in Goshen, in my community, and people say, "Hey, how are you?" I mean, it used to just be knee jerk, "Oh, I'm doing great. How are
Yeah.
you?" And I'm not doing that anymore because there's something for me that feels deeply dishonest
Mm.
most days. And so I've found myself more and more saying, "I'm okay." And
Yeah.
it really kind of it recenters the immediate conversation because usually the other person is like, "Oh yeah, same." Like, "We're still here. We're okay. We're hanging on." But it's that a little bit of acknowledgement of the weight, right? Instead of just jumping towards everything's great. We know it's not. We know better. And anybody who tells me that they're doing great, I fear they're not really engaged or paying attention. Some of us need reminders to find our counterweights, right? So we don't sink completely into despair and outrage. That's me. I'm on that
Mhm.
end of it.
Yeah.
Some people need help remembering the weights. Like
Yeah.
some of us are just wired to look away. I don't want to think
Mm.
about it. I have so many people in my everyday, ordinary life who are struggling so deeply in ways I have never struggled. My husband is a chaplain of a county jail. Most of the people, I work in a community kitchen, I'm on staff there 2 days a week. Most of the people in our everyday lives are struggling. And
Mm.
I owe it to them. I owe it to myself. I owe it to God. I owe it to this community to be engaged, to be paying attention to the things that make their lives harder than they should be, to the things that are unfair. And so yes, we're all kind of different people. We're wired differently. We just have to find a way to carry it both.
One of the, like, last big things I wanna make sure we get in is going back to what I said at the top of the episode. I didn't even know what that plant was, so I am
Yeah.
not gonna be the expert on seeds and plantings and gardening. But in the Holy Ground essay, you're talking about how you have tended a garden for, most of your life, and you
Mhm.
say, "Other than a few lackluster years, when plunging my hands into soil didn't seem like a viable option. Not a spring has passed that I haven't tossed a handful of belief into a patch of dirt and waited to see what would happen." And I just have that tossed a handful of belief in bold and red there because
Mm.
one of the other concepts that I teach is this idea of veering into the unexpected. So we think we know where that's headed, tossing a handful of seeds, tossing, whatever. And so to just kind of change it there at the last minute just wakes us back up, this handful of belief. And I just wanted to hang out there for a second because, like you said, we like more people than ever are struggling in ways we have no idea about right now, and just the sheer quantity of it. And whether they're waiting for something horrible to be over or they're just putting in their reps, trying to do the thing, trying to get started on a dream, and it feels like they're just scattering seeds everywhere and nothing's taking root. I am not the bona fide gardener or planter, but you
Mhm.
are. And I just want you to talk for a little while about what this practice of scattering seeds, scattering belief, scattering the hope of what could be
Mhm.
has taught you about waiting when it doesn't feel like anything is changing. I'll just say the
Yeah.
only piece that I have on seeds is that I once said to Justin in real life and then wrote it in a book. We can't go in and rip the seeds open to speed up the process. Man, I wish we
Right.
could, but it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You'd actually ruin
Right.
the seed if you try to do that.
Right. Right.
So what do you say to all the people listening who are like, listen, I'm trying to show up, I'm trying to have my joy, I'm trying to chase the dream, I'm trying to like break through the noise of anything. Instagram at the bottom of the list, all of them. What do we do about that when it just feels like nothing's happening, even though we know that's not how seeds work?
Yeah. I learned so much from my little garden. We live here
Yeah.
in a city, in a very ordinary neighborhood that most people would not consider ideal or beautiful.
Mm,
So I have these little garden plots right, on our small little property here back by the alley. And I putter around in there. It's the beginning of March. I'm in northern Indiana, and so we're still going to get snow, and we know we are, and we're just trying to pretend otherwise for now. It's going to be a while before I plant that garden. That's a couple months away. But I think of, just as one example, I write at the very end of the book about my peony plant, and that's a peony on the cover of the book. It's my
okay.
favorite flower.
Okay.
And so, yep. Oh, I love it so
Mm,
much.
so
Um,
beautiful.
Come March, I start to look out my bedroom window at the backyard where I know my peonies are going to grow. So, a peony is a perennial. You don't plant them every year. You
Hmm.
just plant them once and they keep coming back. And right now there's nothing to see. But what I know for sure is that in a few more weeks, as the ground continues to thaw and warm up and the sun comes out a little bit more, I'm going to see little tiny shoots that come
Mm.
up through the soil. And as soon as that happens, I'm like, okay, stop everything. My job is to watch these peonies bloom. I mean, I am helicopter mothering them, because they're just so meaningful. They're a gorgeous flower. They're a fleeting flower. They don't stick around for very long. And so it's a practice of hope. There is work happening underground right now as we speak on this Wednesday that I cannot see happening. It doesn't look like there's anything there. It looks like, I mean, our grass is brown. The snow just recently went away. Everything looks pretty ugly outside. But what I know for sure is in a couple of months, the most glorious, beautiful thing is going to push through that soil and bloom. And so that, I could just write forever about gardens. I don't think I'm particularly good as a gardener. I call myself a wannabe gardener, in part because I am comparing myself to my dad, who's like so official about everything he does. But for me, it's just a practice of find something to plant. I mean, everybody try it. Get yourself a pot this spring. If you're not situated where you can do that outside, do it indoors, like the little kids in elementary school that used to plant the little soybean or the bean
Yes,
seed and watch
totally.
there's
And the
something
paper towel.
really, yes, there's something really magical and meaningful about watching something grow and
Mm,
recognizing what it takes and recognizing how slow it is. We are in a rushed culture where everything
mm,
feels urgent, and a lot of things are. When we can slow ourselves down to look around us in our particular lives and find those moments to recognize that not everything is an emergency,
mm,
that we can choose our joy and our rest and our delight, knowing that it's not like a willful, I refuse to acknowledge the pain of this world. It's like, I need this moment to stay human so that I can continue to care about the cause of humanity. It's not in my purview to give anybody permission to do anything, right? But I am here to remind us that we already have permission to care for ourselves in those small, accessible, meaningful ways, to get really serious about it. I want us to do the work of knowing ourselves a little bit better. So when you talked about those lists that I have, like I wanted the book Counterweights, the chapters are very short, so we cover a lot. But after every chapter, I wanted there to be like a little bonus counterweight, like a thing that like
Mm.
pause, take a breath, smile, laugh, have some fun. But it's also me doing the work of knowing myself, because if we're going to find those little things that help lift us up, we have to know where we might go looking for them. And so, yeah, this is just me reminding all of us that it is worthy work. It's slow. We don't have to be in a hurry about it. But if we can sometimes see ourselves caring for ourselves, it's a clunky way of saying it, but for me, the nuance is important. Like we see ourselves, especially as women, caring for other people all the time. We need to see ourselves caring for ourselves
Wow.
sometimes. And
Yeah.
so I'm here to give that reminder. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I love that. Continuing with the seed theme, you talk about how your son Silas once called Jesus God on the ground. And I love
Mhm.
that so much.
Me
I
too.
want to kind of wrap us up here with just the seed imagery. You talk about a parable found in the Gospel of Mark about a farmer who scatters seed on the ground night and day. While he's asleep or awake, the seed sprout and crowns, but he does not understand how it happens. You say in the book that this went from a me story for you to being an us story. And I just want to read a passage from the book and have you kind of tie all that together for us as we end. You're talking about your neighborhood. You say, as I write this, summer is steadily approaching the blessed season when our neighborhood is revived after another long winter. Here in the sweet spot, we'll listen to each other's music and eat each other's food. We'll snoop around Angel's chili plants, tasting a tiny flaming bite as they roar at our low tolerance for spiciness. We'll share buckets of blackberries and paper plates stacked with tamales, not as best friends with everything in common, but as neighbors who choose to survey the landscape and let our individual tendrils twist into sturdy rope. Come on, come on. That's so good. This garden of community flowers in summer's heat, but it lives year round in dormant slumber and even in decay, turning in every season. We drink the same rain and breathe the same air. We bolster each other against the wind and mourn our losses after each storm. We struggle and thrive. In the shelter of each other, we receive our rescue. From the brink of disaster, we stick our necks out and bloom. And you go on a little later in that passage to say, we are a garden with a job to do. So just bring
Mhm.
those two things together, that passage and this is an us story, not a me story.
Yeah. I mean, I think my a lot of my faith was formed around the idea that it was all personal and individual, and the emphasis on having a personal relationship with Jesus, which I believe is true, but I think it's a little too narrow. I think it allowed my perspective to become a little tunnel vision.
Mm,
That I'm just worrying about myself, I'm worrying about my own, a lot of these Christian phrases that come up in me when I talk about this, like my walk with the Lord, whatever. As I have grown and changed my mind, which we also have permission to do, if we are not changing, we are not growing. And so I hope to kind of destigmatize that idea, because a lot of people, I've changed my mind about a lot of things, and people around me freaked out. There were people who it really scared, and that's okay, right? And so, yes, you already have permission to reevaluate things and see things differently. But at the most foundational level, moving into this community, to this home, to this city, moving into a place where I was, for the first time in my life, surrounded at close proximity by people who look and live and believe differently than I do, it changed my life forever. And so like I just see, we come full circle to how do we carry the cosmos? We do it in community. We do it with other people. We share the load. We shoulder the load. We prop each other up when we need to, and we are the ones being propped up at
mm,
times. And so we see this interdependence really played out beautifully in a garden,
mm,
where things are growing from the garden, they're drinking the same rain, and they're feeling the same sun, and the metaphor is just there again, the analogy of like, here we are, all me and all of my neighbors, all of us, right? We're here in the same place at the same time, doing our best to get by, to survive, to thrive. And to the extent that we are able to kind of lean on each other along the way. And I'm not just talking about my next door neighbors. I mean, I see online communities as really valuable.
Hmm.
Wherever we're finding community, if we're able to do this work together from any perspective, I just think that's the key. That's the key to moving forward.
Hmm.
That's the key for me to waking up to things that I personally, had never experienced, and so we can only do that work if we're willing to get kind of closer to each
Yeah.
other.
Oh, love that. Well, Shannan, I could hang out with you all day, and I think
I
that
know,
needs to
same.
be on the docket, including a dinner with Kelsey. Let
Absolutely.
everybody know where they can get more of you, where they can find this book. It's out. This will air 1 week before the book is out. So, any pre-order bonuses you want them to know about,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
podcasts, anything you want to point them to, let them know all about it.
Yes. Yeah, so if you happen to catch this before March 24th, the book officially comes out the 24th. If you catch it in that pre-order window, you can get the audiobook for free. It is read by
Nice.
me.
That's amazing.
And so I know a lot of people are really geared towards audio more and more. So yes, hurry up and pre-order before the 24th, and then go to my website, shannonmartin.com, and you'll find the book page, and you can enter your information and get that free audiobook. It's a great thing. And
Yeah.
there's a guide. We have a downloadable guide to begin your own counterweights practice. So it's 4 pages long. I think it's not overwhelming, but it will give you a starting point
Mm,
so that you can read as I lay out my practice for you, and then you can go and really start your own practice. There are a few other little things for you. But yeah, you can find this book wherever you find your books. Find it at your local bookstore if
mm,
possible. That's just a
mhm.
great way to support the community. But it's on
Yeah.
Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble Bookshop, all the places. And then you can kind of track with me on Instagram at Shannan Writes. I'm on Instagram and Threads most days. I still really love it. And then I'm also on Substack. I have a best-selling Substack where I talk about a lot of these similar ideas. It's called The Soup, but you can just Google my name and Substack and it'll pop right up.
Nice.
Yeah, and yeah, I would love for you to kind of follow along and become part of that community as well.
Love it, and it's Shannan is how we
That's
spell
right.
Shannan. Shannan, thank you so much for being here. I knew this was gonna be a favorite conversation, and I was not wrong, so
I
I've
loved
we're
it.
friends now, okay, that's okay.
Absolutely. It's
Love it.
done.
Love it. All right, friends. The book is Counterweights: An Essential Practice for Holding Hope in a Heavy World. It is out next week everywhere books are sold. But go get those pre-orders in. Get 2 books for the price of 1. Get the audiobook in addition to the hardcover, the printed cover copy of it. That is an incredible way to work your way through the book. And hearing the book in the author's voice is just the absolute best. I'm a huge fan. So until then, I'm going to leave you with these words from Shannan. Abundance isn't experienced by merely counting our blessings, but by countering our weights. Until next time, friends, this is the Mary Marantz Show, and welcome to your Show Up season.